What's up YouTube, it's JMac and I have another MOC for you today. This is actually two MOCs, and they are both freight locomotives for my freight section of the railway. Let's look at the big yellow one first. This build is inspired by Jangbrick's recent yellow locomotive that he constructed, although it is not directly based off of it. It is also, however, inspired by an old train I built as a kid. It was actually intended to be the American train, Union Pacific, that old train. This one is not directly inspired from that, and it is not intended to be Union Pacific, but it does take some inspirations from that old build, because I used some of the same pieces, such as this. So as you can see, I finally came up with a sloped front design. It took me forever to come up with a design that I could look at and say, that looks good. I also used these window frames for the windows on this locomotive, because otherwise it looked awful. Don't ask me why. Above that, it has this little lights contraption, and there are little bars like this on either end of the locomotive. Here's the cab from the other end. It looks exactly the same. Inside of the cab, there is just a space for an engineer. There is really no detail, so I'm not the locomotive. As you can see, I used these huge tile pieces that LEGO started doing with some of their trains. I had a few of them laying around, so I was like, hey, great use for that part. So I stuck them on here and worked it all out. So the entire side here, including this part, is made out of tiles and plates and whatnot. As you can see, there's a power functions bogie right here. You can see on the top of the train, this is where the lights are, so I kind of smoothed that out as much as I could. Also on top, if you can see, there is a fan here, two horns. They are really far back. I did not like that, but I was forced to, and another cooling vent. And here's where it covers up for the back. This roof has another thing. It is removable. If you grab this fan, you remove it to reveal the power functions battery box. And to check that it's connected with the receiver, you can actually see it through the window, which is kind of awesome. The train is extremely simple in design. It just has two lights and this nice curved thing to round it off. And you can see we have some tiles under here and a nice bar on the back. The second MOC I did here is very, very different and doesn't really have anything in common with the yellow one. So you can tell that some of these parts on it came from the red cargo train, which I do have, although this is actually a 9-volt train, not power functions. As you can see on top of it, I just have these two horns made out of these pieces. I tried to do something different, use those for the horns instead of the other parts. And here's some fans, lots of grating on top. And on the sides of this train, we have these grates, and they don't do anything. But on this part of the train, the side compartments do matter. So I used these parts from the red cargo train, took the idea, and in there you can just see we have some various equipment. And on the other side of the train, it's similar, but we have different stuff. As you can see, the front of the train is a very basic design with the train logo above the lights and the grill pieces. And as you can see, it's 4 wide until it gets to the cabin section, which does have a roof that can be removed, and there's just an engineer in there. There's really no detail. You can see this nice little divot in the side, and this end of the train is the same. This train is mostly symmetrical except for the differences, like with this compartment not being over there, and the bogies are not aligned. To show you footage of these two trains running, I'd like to point out that I also made a MOC video on this shunter locomotive that I recently built. Unless you haven't seen it, go check that out after I show you footage of them running.